So in this video we're going to talk about fills and outlines, and I mentioned this briefly in the video about basic shapes and pre-made shapes. So whenever you have an object or a shape, whether it's opened or closed, it's defined visually by two things. So there is an outline, which is a border, which goes all the way around, and then whatever is contained inside of that border is called the fill. So this is really important. It's an important distinction to know when we're going to go and do like laser cutting or use the Cricut machine. We need to know what is the border, because the border is usually what's going to be cut by the machine, and we need to know what the fill is, because if we have a fill, that is usually the part that is going to be engraved. I like to make the distinction that a border is usually, it's cut, so it's, think of scissors cutting a line, and a fill, engraving, is kind of like scratching or painting, so it's more of a paintbrush. So if I had this shape and I sent it to the laser cutter, it would cut it around the border like this. If I were to put another shape inside of it, let's say an ellipse, and I don't want this to be cut out, right? So right now it would, if I sent it to the machine as is, it would cut along this black border on the outside and then would cut my circle on the inside. Let's say I don't want that circle to be cut, I want it to be engraved. So I would get rid of the border. So on the right hand side, this panel in the middle, fills and borders, I'm going to change my border to 0%, and then I'm going to give it a color as a fill, and by default is usually black, okay, or gray. So if I were to send this to the machine, it would cut out, scissors, this line, and then this area that is in the middle would be engraved or scratched or, painted in, whatever. So I don't really know how to explain it other than this, but just remember, fill is whatever is in the inside, which is defined by the border. If you think of it in geometric terms, you can also say that the border is the perimeter and the fill is the area which is in the inside. You can change colors of the fills and borders as you want. If you don't want a border or a fill, don't put it as white. White is still a color and it will be recognized by the machine. If you want something to be transparent or get rid of it, put it at 0%. Okay? And you can make the borders more or less thick. It doesn't really make a difference for us, since we're not going to be using vectors for graphic design. We're going to be using it mostly for laser cutting. So if I have a 10-point border compared to a 1-point border, the machine isn't really going to do anything with that. It's just going to cut it. And that's pretty much it. There are like little details that you could add. This is mostly for graphic design purposes. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. So I'm going to take this shape, I'm going to give it a thicker border. And if I go here to settings, I can change how the ends look, how the joints look. So right here, my joint is squared. I can chamfer it, or I can make it round. And then you can make a border into like a dashed or dotted line, but we really won't go into that that much for our class.